So continuing from our previous lesson, we have a library that has a project in it. We have 5 clips in a single event. And we've taken those 5 clips and placed them here in the storyline. But they're there in their entirety. Chances are you don't want to use everything from every clip. At the very least you may want to trim a little off the beginning and the end. I'm going to select these 5 clips here and clear out the storyline. And I'm going to go to the first clip here. And let's say we don't want to use everything in the clip but only a portion of it. One way to do that would be to trim the clip before we bring it in. Notice how the yellow box surrounds the entire clip, and if I were to drag it in I get the entire clip in the storyline. But if I click and drag the left end I could have the clip start at a different point. I could see in the viewing area exactly where that would be. So if I wanted it to start here and not have this beginning part I could trim a little bit off the beginning, and at the end I could trim some off as well. Now this selected area is all that will be brought in when I drag into the timeline here. So I can pick out specific areas. I could do the same thing with this clip, for instance. Picking out a specific area and bringing that in. What could help sometimes is to actually see a little more detail here in the clip. So I can click here and adjust the size of the clip. So I can make it a little bit bigger. Now you can see, for instance, this clip moves over all these different rows here. I can click and drag this yellow line here, either the beginning part or the end part, to change what I'm seeing. And it might be a little bit easier to do it this way. But for most what we'll do I'll just switch to here. Then we can see it very easily all in these smaller viewing areas. Now I could also bring in multiple pieces of the same clip. So for instance I could say I want to start here and go to here and bring this piece in. But then I could also say I want to bring in this piece. And they appear here in the timeline as 2 separate clips that I can move around. But I've grabbed them both from the same original clip. It's okay to have that. It's even okay to repeat portions. So this one actually repeats portions of the other 2. You can have the same clip or portions of a clip in your timeline as many times as you want. Now there are other ways to only use a portion of a clip. I can bring the entire thing in here. And then once I have it in I can grab the left or right side to trim it. I'm actually going to zoom in a little bit here, clicking here and increasing the zoom a bit. So now I have finer control. And I can select this clip and I could bring the left side in or the end in to trim it to where I want. And I can even do that after I've added another clip. For instance, let's bring in the second clip here. I had it there. Now I have 2 clips. I can select this clip, go to the right side. Notice what the cursor looks like. It's kind of showing me a visual of the end of the clip as opposed to when I move over here and it's showing me a visual of the beginning of the clip. I can grab this and trim the first clip down and notice the second clip will move along with it instead of just leaving a blank space behind. So I could bring this down and trim it. I could trim the beginning here like that. I could trim the end of this clip. And that way I could adjust things really easily. This is the way I prefer to work. Drag the clips I need in and then move the edges to trim them. Another way you can handle this is if you go to where the clips meet and you double click, you open up the Precision Editor. You also can get to this with View and then Show or Hide Precision Editor. Control E is easy to remember, E for Editor. And now you can see this entire first clip here, at least the part that is trimmed off the end. For this one you could see the part that's trimmed off the beginning. If I move this clip you can see here I've got now some trimmed off. So you can clearly see that this is the clip that we'll be showing and then it will switch down to this clip. And this is the exact place of the cut. And not only can you move these clips here to get the cut exactly where you want between the 2 of them, but you can grab this box here in the center and move the cut at the same time for the first and last clip. So if these clips are perfectly synchronized, say it's a conversation, one person is talking and the other person then picks up the conversation there, you can move the cut to where you want without having to get these 2 tracks out of sync. And when you're done you can do Control E or just return to return to the normal interface here. So notice when I bring a new clip in here, if I just double click there, you can see that this clip here has some extra because I trimmed some off the end. But this clip, of course, is added right there at the beginning. I can now move it to the left to trim some off the beginning there and get these to exactly where I want. As I move the red line, just by moving my cursor back and forth, the view area is always showing me what would be seen in the final video. So I can really clearly see where the transition is there. You can also in the precision editor click at another cut there and jump right to it. You don't have to exit the precision editor and enter it again to go to another cut. I can even go to the end here and then trim off the end like that, or click here to go to the beginning and adjust the cut there at the beginning of the first clip. Now whether you have complete clips or portions of them, arranging clips is actually very simple. You can just click and drag to move a clip somewhere. So I can click and drag to move that clip to the end. I can take this clip from the middle. I can move it to the beginning. And you can just arrange them as you would any object in kind of any app on your Mac. The timeline here is what's called magnetic, which means that things will stick to each other. You're never going to have these gaps. If I move this one over here, for instance, try to drop it here, I'm not going to get a gap. It's going to simply snap to the end of that. And when I drag this one out, notice that the gap that's left there is going to collapse. So it's easy to just click and drag and move things around to get them in the order that you want. There are other ways that you can edit the clips in here. And there are usually multiple ways to access these editing techniques. For instance, say I wanted to split this clip right here. I want it to split it so that it's 2 instead of 1. With the cursor placed here and the red line showing right where I want to split the clip, I can do Command B and you can see how it splits this clip into 2 parts. Once it's split into 2 parts, I can trim one part or the other part. But I could also grab one part and move it. Say move this one to the end or between some other clips. Another way to split is to switch the type of cursor you're using. Click here to switch the cursor. We're using the select cursor most of the time. It's kind of the multi-tool of all the cursors. But I can use blade. And then once I'm using the blade cursor, I can click anywhere I want and it will cut right there. This is really useful if you want to make lots of cuts. You could also go to the trim cursor. The trim cursor allows you to select a clip and then you're automatically in trimming mode. You can't do other things like moving the clips around and such. I could grab the left or right sides as before in trimming mode, but also I can select the clip, click and drag the clip itself, and the space for the clip remains exactly the same. So this is probably around 6 seconds. But I could drag around to get the right portion of the clip into this 6-second space. So going back to the select tool, there's some keyboard shortcuts because if you're working very intensely on a video, you're going to need to do lots of trimming and splitting, and it's going to be easier to know the keyboard shortcuts. So if you go to trim here, we already saw that there's Command B for blade. Trim start, trim end, and trim to playhead are Option and then the left and right square brackets and then the backslash key, which is right next to that. So trim start would allow you to set a spot like here and then do Option and then left bracket, and you can see it automatically trims the start there. Here I can go towards the end. I can do Option right bracket and it trims off the end. And using Option and backslash would simply go to the closest one. So if I'm on the left side here, it's going to trim to the start. Whereas if I'm on the right side here, it's going to trim to the end. Now another technique you may want to use is a cutaway. So you bring in a clip like this. And let's say this is actually somebody talking. And as they're talking you want to cut away to maybe the reaction of another person and then cut back to the person talking. What you don't want to do is you don't want to go and split right here and then drag in the reaction right there because the person's talking and then it's going to cut away to the other person, but the original person stopped talking and then it goes back to what the other person's saying. You want the person who's talking to keep talking even though you've cut away. The way to do that is simply instead of dragging into the main timeline here, you're going to drag it on top. And you can see you could have multiple tracks here. So this is the main track, but the track on top is what you'll see visually. So as you move through it here, you get here and the top track is now showing as a video. But then it returns to show the main track as soon as the top track is done. So I can maybe trim this a little bit, get it to where I want, move it to where I want, and now this person down here is talking, and then at this part of the video it cuts away to show this person and it combines their audio. You could stack up as many tracks as you need, although typically doing 2 like this is enough. Although we'll see later on how to have other things in other tracks, like for instance text and titles and graphics and such.